Good evening. This is Pastor Lonnie Embry, and today we're going to continue our study of the book of Genesis. We're going to be studying tonight in chapters 13 and 14. And the premise is Abraham and his nephew Lot have settled down in Canaan, and they've been amassing wealth, and they've got a lot of sheep because sheep and cattle is how they amassed wealth back then. And we're going to learn what happens when a quarrel breaks out amongst the uncle and the nephew, and how it's quickly resolved, and who takes the high road, who was entitled, who was not, who made the right decision, who made the wrong decision. And we're going to talk about that and then compare it with our own personal life, and kind of give us what the premise of this lesson could be. I believe that in every part of the Bible, we can take a story that occurs there and apply it to our own personal life. So this is something for you to be challenged and to think about in your own personal dealings with your family, and maybe people that have had quarrels with you that maybe you've had some challenges getting along with. And kind of, put yourself in Abram and Lot's shoes and decide who are you in that situation. And so from there, we're going to go on and talk about what happens when Abram's family is actually taken prisoner. Lot is taken prisoner, and we'll go into that and find out a little bit of importance about that as well. So let's begin. We'll start chapter 13, and I'll read the story, but then I'm going to elaborate a little bit. So starting in verse 1. So Abram went up from Egypt to Negev with his wife and everything he had, and Lot went with him. Abraham had become very wealthy in livestock and in silver and gold. Now, from Negev, he went from place to place until he came to Bethel, to that place between Bethel and Ai where his tent had been earlier, and where he had first built an altar. And there Abraham called on the name of the Lord. Now Lot, who was moving about with Abram, also had flocks and herds and tents. But the land could not support them while they stayed together, for the possessions were so great that they were not able to stay together. And quarreling arose between Abram's herders and Lot's. The Canaanites and the Perizzites were also living in the land at that time. Well, let's stop there for a minute. Here we're reading about the wealth that Abraham had amassed, and Lot, because he's hanging around Abram, is getting blessed as well, and he's growing in wealth, and things are good. Families enjoying life. But then here's something that happens. Now they've got a growth problem. They have a challenge that comes up, and it becomes a quarrel. And Abram's people are fighting with Lot's people, and they're getting all upset. And I'm sure harsh words were called and insults. And then in the middle of all that, it mentions something that seems off the wall. That the Canaanites and the Perizzites are also living in the land at that time. Now, if you remember, Canaanites and Perizzites were enemies to Abram and Lot. That was their land that had been promised to Abraham. And so that was the enemy of these new strangers in their land. So typically when that happens, you would think that family would bind together and protect one another from their enemies. That's why they're mentioning, hey, look, and they were in the middle of their enemies while they're having this fight, so they became divided. How often do we get divided when we're surrounded by our enemies, but yet the people that we could be protected with and lock arms with, we get in a fight with them, and then everything goes wrong. And rather than make peace, an issue of pride comes in, and we don't have agreements with each other, and then you see a break in a barrier which weakens both parties in the family and leaves them open for attack. So think about your own personal life. Maybe you've got a family feud with somebody. Maybe someone is upset with you about how you do things, and maybe they got greedy or something happened, and there's a rift, and now nobody's willing to mend a rift. So, how do you solve your problems? You know, when there's a quarrel going on, do you hold that grudge in that quarrel? Do you quickly resolve it? Do you come up with an alternative? Do you only serve yourself? We're gonna explore that a little bit. So, going to verse 8, so Abraham said to Lot, "Let's not have any quarreling between you and me, or between your herders and mine, for we are close relatives. Is not the whole land before you? Let's part company. If you go to the left, I'll go to the right. If you go to the right, I'll go to the left." Now Lot looked around and saw that the whole plain of the Jordan towards Zoar was well watered, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. So Lot chose for himself the whole plain of Jordan and set out towards the east. The two men parted company. Abram lived in the land of Canaan, while Lot lived among the cities of the plain and pitched his tent near Sodom. Now the people of Sodom were wicked and were sinning greatly against the Lord. Now we're going to stop there for a minute. So this is clearly a situation in which Abraham is going against his human nature. He is showing godlike nature in how he's handling Lot. Abram heard of the mumbling and the quarrel and the problem, and so rather than letting it fester like most of us do and letting it just build and gossip and talk about it, Abram went right to Lot and said, "Hey, let's solve this immediately. You can go pick whatever land you want, whatever you take, I'll go the other way." Now I want you to understand something. Abram was Lot's uncle, so he's the senior here. Abram had all the right to choose the best land and what he wanted. He had the right for first dibs. You know, have you ever been in a situation where you had the right for first dibs and you're going to fight for that right for first dibs no matter what? And all kinds of wounding and headaches and hurt happen in that situation. Well, Abram immediately said, "Hey, listen, we got a problem here. I want to solve it quickly. Your family." So it's obvious that Abram loved Lot. Lot had a choice now, and this is, I think, the epicenter of us learning more about Lot's character. Because at that time, Lot could have made better choices. Lot sat there and it was observing what was going on, and so Lot sees the valley of Jordan and says, "Hey, I want that. That plain of Jordan's got food, it's got plenty of water, and it's right next to these two major cities, Sodom and Gomorrah. I'll take the choice piece of land." The problem with that is his nephew was obviously somewhat lacking in wisdom, because what he chose to do is take the choicest piece of land right next to the most two wicked cities that did not know God, which put his family at risk to be tempted and pulled away from God. Now, how often do we do that in the world? We got to have that great job or that great environment, neighborhood that we're going to have. And what puts us right in the middle of a bunch of non-believers that do not have our values and morals. And we let our kids play with them, and we let them interact with them, and we don't protect them, and we don't think about the cause and effect of dabbling our toe in it. I want you to think about something. If you've ever painted a room white, for example, and you've got a white paint or an off-white paint that you're going to paint, and you go to paint the room, and somebody comes in and they take a pint of black paint and put it in. That white will never be the same color ever again. See, you can put white in black and it'll disappear, because that's what sin does. It covers up purity. You put the black in the white and it'll disappear, but you can never take it out, so it changes the color and it taints it. So the more we're around and partaking in what the people, non-believers do, the more we risk becoming like that. So we have to guard ourselves carefully. And Abram knew this. Lot obviously did not. Or if he did know it, which I believe he was taught properly with his upbringing with Abram, I'm sorry, it's soon to be Abraham. And Tel-Avi, who was Tela, which was his grandfather, he was taught right. But here he made a decision that was all about me. How often do we get in arguments with family and friends that it's all about us? If we would just stop our mindset of having to be right and quickly end the argument, quickly give them choice, quickly resolve the matter. Now we're demonstrating in love and let God settle it. I'll explain why that's important in the future. But, it's really interesting because Lot, his character is revealed by his choice to live near wicked Solomon. He was me-centered with no thoughts of his uncle. And in America, isn't it the same way? We're very me-centered. We don't think about our elderly. We don't think about what's happening to them. We don't think about our homeless. We don't think about the people in need. We only think about us and providing that check and doing the things we need to do. And we don't put our priorities on those around us. So the thing to understand is that when Lot chose the good pasture and with water and good pasture, even though the wicked influence was right there and could be dangerous to his family, he demonstrated his draw towards sin. He demonstrated he was walking on the line. Are we living in Sodom for the best job, lifestyle? Do we risk our family? Do we risk ourselves? We have to be very careful not to behave like those around us and not to be influenced by them. We have to be the influencers. Kind of prime example, I hear Christians all the time, oh, I'm going out to the club tonight, or I'm going to the bar. Oh, why? I'm just going to hang out, have a good time. I understand, but we know what happens at bars. We know what happens at clubs. You're opening the door to be tempted. When we gained control of our life through Christ dying for our sins, then we had to understand at that point sin becomes focused on regaining influence that it lost in your life, in its life. Sin had influence in your life, predominated your life, your mind, your heart, your spirit, and your soul till you accepted Christ. When you accepted Christ, sin lost that control. That control was given back to you. And mastery was given back to you. So every day we have to continually master sin and not allow sin to have a foothold back in our life. Are you doing that? I don't know. But it's a struggle if you're not aware of it. So you have to change your mind. A lot of times we think, well, our sins have been paid for, so I can do whatever I want. Yes and no. Because that mindset is just as incorrect as having sin in your life and shortcomings. We have to look at sin through God's eyes and look at it as we have mastery and we can do the right thing. We just have to purpose to do it. And ask God for help when we're having struggle. So we need to make sure that we are set apart, a peculiar people that is setting the example for God on a daily basis so that people will see God in our lives. Not judgmenting, not judging anyone for doing what they do. That's between them and God. But setting the example. Because if your lifestyle doesn't match what you're saying, it's not going to get the same impact. So, now, when we continue, obviously, the continuation is on the 14th verse. The Lord said to Abram, after Lot had parted from him, look around from where you are to the north and the south, to the east and the west, and all the land that you see I will give to you and your offspring forever. I will make your offspring like the dust of the earth, so that if anyone could count the dust, then your offspring could be counted. Go walk through the length and the breadth of the land, for I am giving it to you. So Abram went to live near the great trees of Mamre at Hebron, where he pitched his tents, and there built an altar to the Lord. So God saw what happened, saw the transaction, and then immediately tells Abram, and I'm sure he could see his nephew over there in the plain. He says, everything you see, I'm going to give to you. So it doesn't matter you just let Lot have access. I'm going to give it to you anyways. You made the right choice. I'm going to give you all of this land. See, God had a plan. He already knew what was coming down. How often do we take matters in our own hands and we try to take the best choice of what we think is the best piece that's going to benefit us? And had we but waited and asked God and maybe surrendered to our desires to serve ourselves and serve those around us, we would have gotten the best choice of peace anyways, because God already had it planned. But when we took matters in our own hands, we put ourselves 2 steps backwards instead of 3 steps forward. So I think it's pretty interesting how this is shown in the story of Abraham. Now, going to chapter 14, we're going to go through a quick story here, and then we'll wrap up for 13 and 14. So here Abram, opened himself up. He had the right to choose the land. He let Lot go first. Lot chose the greedy, selfish process. It doesn't say Abram got mad or threw a fit or was angry. He just did what he said he was going to do. Now here's what's interesting. Trouble happens in the land. Remember, we already told you they're surrounded by enemies. At the time when Amraphel was king of Shinar, Arioch king of Elasar, Kedorlaomer king of Elam, and Tidal king of Goyim, these kings went to war against Bera king of Sodom, Bersha king of Gomorrah, Shihab king of Adamah, Shember king of Zeboiim, and the king of Bela, that is Zor. All these latter kings joined forces in the valley of Siddim, that is the Dead Sea Valley. For 12 years they had been subject to Kedorlaomer, but in the 13th year they rebelled. So Kedorlaomer, we only hear about him in the Bible. I haven't seen anything else historically on him. This king had actually taken over these other 5 cities, and they have been paying tribute for 12 years. When a king goes to war and they win, they get tribute or they destroy that land. So they allow them to be king in their own lands, but they still want a tribute. Well, these 5 kings said, hey, we don't want to pay tribute anymore. We're going to rebel. So they rebelled. So in the 14th year, Kedorlaomer and the kings allied with him went out and defeated the Rephaites in Ashertah Karnaim, and the Zunites in Ham, the Emites in Sheva Kiratham, and the Horites in the hill country of Seir, as far as El Paran near the desert. Then they and the Horites, then they turned back and went to El Mishpat, which is Kadesh, and they conquered the whole territory of the Amalekites, as well as the Amorites who were living in Hazron Tamar. So this was not a small feat. These are 4 kings bound together. They've got large armies. They're going head to toe with 5 other kings. I'm sure this was a pretty hefty war. 9 kings involved here, right? Now it gets interesting. Then the king of Sodom, the king of Gomorrah, the king of Adamah, the king of Zeboiim, and the king of Bela marched out, drew up their battle lines in the valley of Siddim against Kedorlaomer, king of Elam, Tidal king of Goyim, Amraphel king of Shinar, and Arioch king of Elasar. 4 kings against 5. Now the valley of Siddim was full of tar pits, and when the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, some of the men fell into them, and the rest fled to the hills. The 4 kings seized all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah, all their food, and then they went away. They also carried off Abram's nephew Lot and his possessions, since he was living in Sodom. A man who escaped came and reported this to Abram, the Hebrew. Now Abram was living near the great trees of Mamre, the Amorite, a brother of Eshcol and Aner, and all who were with him allied with Abram. When Abram heard that his relative had been taken captive, he called out 318 trained men born in his household, went in pursuit as far as Dan. During the night, Abram divided his men to attack them, and he routed them, pursuing them as far as Hobah, north of Damascus. He recovered all the goods and brought back his relative Lot and his possessions, together with the women and other people. Now, here we go. Lot gets captured by this massive army and kings. And then they're going back, and the king's going back to his castle. The 4 kings had dispersed. So you got one king with his army. I'm sure he had a pretty good sized army. And Lot is captured, and a man escapes, and he brings word to Abram. Now, Abram would have been, in most cases, in today's world, would have been like, I'm not getting involved. I'm sitting back. How many people you know like that? I'm not getting into this. I'm not going to help that guy change that tire on the side of the road. I'm not going to help that person who's in need right now. I'm not going to step in when somebody's being abused and say something about that. I'm not going to get involved. That would have been what most people would have done these days. Oh, well, sucks to be him. Good luck. Abram didn't do that. He didn't say, oh, Lot took the best land. Now I can have it all. No, he didn't do that. He immediately got his men. And they went, they chased this king down in the middle of the night. They divided up, they routed them, which means these guys got scared and they started running. They ran from these 318 men. I'm sure there was more men than that. And the battle-hardened warriors, and they ran. That's because God was on Abram's side. They left all the possessions, all the goods, Lot behind, everything, and Abram was able to get it all and acquire it. Now, it's pretty interesting because he's got everything back. He's pretty much the hero of the land. And then something interesting happens. After Abram returned from defeating Chedorlaomer and the kings allied with him, so obviously he defeated the kings that were with him too, so they weren't separated. I was wrong. The king of Sodom came out to meet him in the valley of Sheva, and that is the king's valley. And then Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was the priest of God Most High, and he blessed Abram, saying, Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, and praise be to God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hand. Then Abram gave him 1/10 of everything. So that was a tithe, first tithe we hear about, gave him 1/10, other than Cain and Abel doing their offering. So he gave 10% of everything that he had just acquired. Now here's where it gets interesting though. The king of Sodom said to Abram, give me the people and keep the goods for yourself. So the king jumps in and wants to take a portion of this back. The king lost it. Abram got it. By rights it was his. But the king wanted to jump in. Now remember, Sodom's king is a wicked king. So, it's very interesting what Abram said. Abram said to the king of Sodom, with raised hand I have sworn an oath to the Lord God Most High, creator of the heaven and the earth, that I will accept nothing belonging to you, not even a thread or the strap of a sandal, so that you will never be able to say, I made Abram rich. I will accept nothing but what my men have eaten, and the share that belongs to the men who went with me, to Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre. Let them have their share. Now, think about this. That's the end of the chapter, by the way. Think about this. Would we have done the same? Here you get this massive amount of wealth. He could have been even wealthier, and he was titled to it. The king wanted a piece of the action. He says, take it all. After he'd already given the tithe, take the rest of it. You can have it all, lest you try to take credit for what God did in delivering Lot and all this stuff to me. Because God is the one that gave me that blessing and that win, not the king of Sodom. If you remember, the king of Sodom ran and fled with his army, and many were dying in tar pits. But isn't that right? Isn't that just how you've always got that person who's not involved in something, not there, and then the second it gets good, they want to come in and they want to grab hold of a piece of it. And then act like they did something for you. And so, at the end of the day, would you have done what Abram did? Would you have given it all back? Would you have kept some for yourself? You know, are you actually, in the process right now of getting rich from the enemies of God? Are you getting all your wealth from the wicked, and then letting them get the credit for what God is doing in your life? You know, better to allow God to raise you up and establish you than not. Better for you to and I to not worry about them. You know, give God credit for it. Ask God, what should we do? Should we do something and somebody wants to give us a reward? Maybe we don't take the reward. Maybe we don't take the reward because, well, I'm entitled to the reward. Well, maybe. But what if God tells you not to take the reward, lest he tries to say he made you wealthy versus God making you wealthy? We've gotten so carried away lately about not giving God credit for what is due, not seeing God in everything that happens to us. We've gotten too smart for our own good. So we try to rationalize it. We try to figure it out. We try to put other circumstances to what's happening. Kind of like when we figured out what the rainbow was through science, and we tried to justify and rationalize it, but it still was there because of God's promise and his covenant. We've gotten too smart for our own good. So my challenge to you is this. Think about this week. Are you more like Abram? Are you more like Lot? Are you busy taking the best choices for yourself and not your fellow man? Are you taking the best choices from your family and not helping them? Are you so concerned with your well-being that you're not helping those around you? What are you made of? What kind of character are you made of? God will bless you, but he blesses those who are making right choices, doing right things. And all blessing comes from him. So my challenge to you is to strive to become like Abram. If you've made choices like Lot, I know I have. If you make choices like Lot, then ask that God create in you a new heart, a clean mind renewed with him. Ask that he begin to help you make the choices that is the right choice, not necessarily the easiest or best for yourself. And God will take care of you. I think sometimes we make those decisions because we're afraid God forgot us or he's not going to help us. Don't ever think that God is in your corner. That being said, may you all have a wonderful week and enjoy, and God bless.